Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, we're diving straight into the harsh reality of AI architecture in mid-2026. A lot of folks are building these incredibly sophisticated systems right now, but they're making a massive, massive strategic mistake. They are treating their AI vendors like permanent, unchangeable infrastructure. I mean, imagine wiring your entire multi-million-dollar factory so it can only accept electricity from one specific power plant. If that plant goes down, raises prices, or changes its voltage, your factory simply stops working. That's exactly what's happening in the tech industry today. That mindset is the new single cloud dependency. And honestly, it's a ticking time bomb for your business. The stakes are, frankly, unbelievably high right now. When an enterprise is suddenly forced to migrate away from their primary AI provider, the data shows us it costs a staggering average of $315,000 per project. And let's be real about what that number actually represents. That is not just a line item on a spreadsheet. That's hundreds of lost developer hours. That's entire product launches delayed by quarters. It's a massive hit to your engineering budget, burning resources on a reactive emergency instead of actually building new features. And the most frustrating part? It happens simply because architectures weren't designed to be portable from day one. So, it totally makes sense why this is keeping executives up at night, right? A massive 81% of enterprise leaders in our industry are actively sweating over this single-vendor AI dependency. They are acutely aware that their entire product capability, the actual core functionality that their users are paying for, is hanging completely on a single company's API key. If that key stops working or the terms change, their product basically just vanishes. But here is the genuinely terrifying part. Despite all that panic, only 6%, yet just 6%, of these leaders say they could actually swap out their AI vendors without causing material disruption to their business operations. I mean, think about that disconnect for a second. Everyone knows it's a giant problem, but practically nobody has the architectural setup to actually solve it if push comes to shove tomorrow. So today's Explainer is basically your survival roadmap. We're going to systematically cover the threat of vendor concentration, uncover where lock-in actually hides in your stack, dismantle the illusion of diversification, learn the 5 disciplines of portable architecture, weigh the true cost of resilience, and finally, build a framework to help you choose your specific diversification strategy. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the threat of vendor concentration. Look, we've got to stop treating single vendor dependency like it's just some annoying IT headache. This is now a massive, board-level business risk that needs to be managed just like supply chain fragility. These 4 categories show exactly what happens when things go sideways. Take pricing power. If a vendor arbitrarily jacks up their API prices by 50% overnight, and they know you can't easily afford the migration work to leave, you literally have zero leverage. You just have to pay it. Or consider strategic direction drift. Imagine the highly tuned model version your complex prompts rely on is suddenly deprecated on a Tuesday, and the newer version doesn't follow instructions the same way. Add in sudden terms and compliance changes. A provider updates their agreements, and boom, you're disqualified under new regulations like the EU AI Act, freezing your deployments overnight. And finally, the big one, existential vendor risk. And that existential risk? It is absolutely not theoretical. Just look at the Builder.ai collapse last year. This left enterprise customers completely dead in the water. We are talking about a company valued at over $1 billion, backed by a massive tech giant, and it still just vanished. Imagine being a developer relying heavily on their infrastructure. You come into work, and your API URLs are suddenly returning 404 errors because the company literally doesn't exist anymore. A technically perfect fallback chain within a single vendor's ecosystem doesn't help you at all if that vendor goes bankrupt or gets shuttered. Which brings us to Section 2, where lock-in actually hides. So if the risks are this devastating, where are we actually getting trapped in our day-to-day tech stacks? You might be surprised to learn it's rarely the model itself anymore. Model layer lock-in has actually kind of commoditized. Swapping a Claude model for a GPT or DeepSeek model is relatively straightforward today. The real catastrophic traps, they've moved up the stack. At the workflow layer, you get locked into proprietary orchestration patterns, meaning your code is deeply intertwined with vendor-specific frameworks or custom memory handling loops. Ripping that out requires rewriting fundamental business logic. But the absolute highest severity is up at the ecosystem layer. That's where your custom fine-tuned models, your specific vector formats, and even your developer culture become completely entangled with one provider. If you're only diversifying at the model layer, you are completely missing the real danger zones. Let's move right along to Section 3, the illusion of diversification. We really need to talk about why so many engineering teams think they're safe when they absolutely aren't. Having 2 different API keys configured gives you a totally false sense of security. There are 5 classic failure modes here. First up, gateway layer concentration. You might use a third-party AI gateway to easily switch models, but you've just shifted your single point of failure. Now you're locked into the gateway provider. Second, stylized prompts. You tune your prompts so heavily for one specific model's quirks that routing to a backup model produces completely unusable garbage. Third, ecosystem coupling, where your app secretly relies on undocumented provider features. Fourth is volume imbalance, and this one is a silent killer. You're multi-provider on paper, but 95% of your traffic hits one vendor. That means your backups have never been truly tested at scale, and when you finally need them, they'll break under the load. And fifth, workflow layer lock-in, where your orchestration is tied to a proprietary framework. None of this is true diversification. It's a complete illusion. Okay, on to Section 4, Disciplines of Portable Architecture. Let's dive into the solution and equip you with the exact tools you need to build genuine portability. Following these 5 operational steps is going to be a real game changer for your risk profile. Step 1, build a stable internal interface, like an internal router. Your application code should never touch a vendor API directly. Step 2, utilize configuration over code. Migrating to a new provider should just be a simple YAML or JSON config flip that takes days to validate, not a frantic code rewrite that takes quarters. Step 3, adopt vendor-agnostic standards. Leveraging protocols like MCP or OpenTelemetry ensures your monitoring isn't locked to one vendor's dashboard. 4, maintain portable artifacts. Actually own your fine-tuning datasets outside of a vendor's walled garden. And 5, implement practiced switching. Think of this as chaos engineering for AI. Routinely shift live traffic to a backup provider for a week to catch hidden couplings before they turn into emergencies. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The crucial mindset shift here is that you must treat these vendors as interchangeable commodities in a competitive market. A vendor who knows you can comfortably route 30% of your production traffic to a competitor by Friday afternoon, they're going to negotiate pricing and support terms with you entirely differently than a vendor who knows you are permanently handcuffed to their ecosystem. Your leverage literally comes entirely from your ability to walk away. Next up is Section 5, the true cost of resilience. Let's be totally honest here for a second, because building this kind of multi-provider resilience, it is definitely not free. There's a real psychological trap for engineering teams. It is so incredibly tempting to optimize purely for the visible cost of diversification. You know, the daily annoyances, the engineering setup to build that internal router, the operational complexity of managing multiple rate limits, and the cross-provider evaluation overhead. But you are trading those annoying daily costs off against the hidden, absolutely catastrophic costs of single vendor concentration. We're talking total pricing exposure, devastating downtime if the provider fails, and that staggering $315,000 migration bill when you're finally forced to move. Architects who only try to avoid the visible, daily annoyances are essentially walking their companies right off an invisible cliff. And finally, Section 6, choosing your diversification strategy. Let's pull all of this together into a practical framework. You really need to deliberately calibrate your investment to match your actual operational risk, because one size definitely does not fit all. If you're just building a quick, low-stakes prototype, sitting safely at level 1 with a single provider is entirely fine. It'd be a massive waste of time to over-engineer it. Small teams might move to level 2 with a manual technical fallback. Modest scale gets you to level 3. But if you are running a scaled enterprise system where vendor risk is a board-level concern, you absolutely have to operate at level 4 or 5. That means actively routing traffic across providers based on cost and latency and running regular strategic practice swaps. The core discipline here is knowingly choosing your level rather than ending up highly concentrated simply by default. So, I want to leave you with this final standard-setting question to ask yourselves and your engineering teams today. Could you move 25% of your traffic to an alternative provider in a week with absolutely zero code changes? If the answer to this is no, then your portability is really just aspirational, right? It's not operational. Look deeply at your systems, find those hidden lock-ins at the workflow and ecosystem layers, and challenge yourself to make your portability real before the market makes it a necessity. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.